right, welcome for downloading and starting to go through this Bible study plan on the 40-day marriage habits devotional. And that's a mouthful, and unfortunately, none of those things are things that anybody really gravitates towards, right? Each one of these words, if I were to look at copywriting exercises, would say, don't have a message titled that. Unfortunately, it's true. And my goal with this message, I really encourage that you listen to it or listen to it with your spouse, is that even though it's a bunch of words that sound like the last thing on earth you want to do, I really want to encourage that if you go through it, it actually may be the best thing you do. Like devotionals, we know we should do it, but how many people find it really difficult to do? And that's a challenge I face, and I'm trying to solve that with mine. And the way to solve that actually is to make it a really easy 15-minute a day habit. The problem is most people really kind of cringe at the idea of habits. Common habits are wake up early, floss your teeth, go to the gym, drink enough water. Like we know they're good, but most people don't do them. And then depending on where you are, the word marriage, like it feels like perhaps a chore. It feels like perhaps not your priority. And there are just so many other more fun things. And then mine is over a 40-day recurring period. Now, we don't go over that in this. This is a 5-day Bible study just to set you up to be excited about having a 40-day recurring devotional. And so that's actually a pretty big lift, a pretty big challenge for me in these 5 days to encourage you to do this. And I don't know if I'll succeed in that, to be honest. But I am going to try. And what I want to do, as I thought about it, were there are 3 things that I needed to make sure I could convey. One was a sense of urgency around having this habit around devotionals. The second was to offer simplicity, because I know it's really hard when you're busy to establish a habit. So trying to make it as easy and simple as possible. But at the same time, the third was to maximize impact. Because I know that, if there's not enough impact, what's the point, right? So I actually like to work things backwards and to tell you why I felt this is so important. I just looked at my own marriage and the challenges we are, and things just got worse. We went to therapy, which I actually think isn't always the best solution if you're looking at it, or maybe you've been through it, you know what I'm talking about. Like once you're there, we think that that's going to be the backstop, but in many cases it can make it much worse. Now, that's a controversial statement, and I go into it in much more detail, not in this study though. I'm really here to talk about why daily scripture together may be the best preventative medicine, but not only in the sense that it prevents the pain that I've experienced and maybe you've experienced, but I really do think it can bring out something that marriage should be about, that you're just not going to be able to do if you go on autopilot. So really it should move you away, and I'm going to emphasize the pain that you will have, even if you don't think you have it now, by going through this. And on the other side of that pain may be refreshing fruit, what I call the promised land. And I'll use that terminology in this. And so I think that the biggest challenge often for establishing habits is we're not aware that we need them. And part of that needs to understand the urgency. And so I used the metaphor of the frog in the pot. And you've probably heard this story where there's a frog in what seems like really cool water. And that sounds great. And perhaps you're in that phase. Or if you're not, perhaps you remember the time that you were. But the reality is there's a low flame beneath the pot. And you probably don't even notice. Or when you do notice, you think, hey, it's a little bit warmer. Well, that's not so bad. and you just stay in it. But you know how this story ends, right? That water just keeps getting hotter and hotter. And soon, problems emerge. And eventually, if you can't find a way to cool it down, it comes to a boil. And that's not that comfortable for a frog or for anybody if it gets hot enough. And I want to say that that's the case for every marriage. Even Adam and Eve, which really started out with probably the best of possible circumstances. I mean, they had probably great food, they had super great real estate, and, most importantly, they had a lot of intimacy with God and with each other, but still didn't end up right. There was sin from the beginning, and we now live in the repercussions of that within ourselves and when we look at the world around us. But they started about as close to perfection as possible. It still didn't work. For them, they started off in really what could have been a very cool pot of refreshing water, and it just ended up badly. The good thing is we know at the end of our story that in faith alone, through Christ's work, we are redeemed and relieved from all of that sin. But it doesn't mean that we don't want to not be in the middle of it on this side of heaven. And so I encourage you to go through this with your spouse. And this really is just a primer on what this 40-day devotional can and should be. And there's plenty of content that's going to be coming forward. But the most important thing as you go through this is, how can you make this simple? How can you make your heart desire to spend this 15 minutes together such that it's not a chore like flossing your teeth, but something that you just can't wait to do? So thank you for downloading this. I really look forward to you going through this all the way to the end and then beyond. Take care.